What's going on, everyone? Welcome back and thank you for being here. I am working on this gyuto, nice 9.5 inch, and I've got my materials fit up, so I figured I will put a video together on how I bed the Tang, because right now you can't really tell, but it's not in there very tight. So I am going to show you how I go about making one of my hidden Tang knives. So first things first, obviously, is getting your materials roughly fit up. For me, I have a front brass bolster and it is fit up. This is fit up really tight. There is no gaps up front. It's all nice and clean fit, so I don't have to worry about fitting the front, or I don't have to worry about gaps up at the front of my fit up here. And so when I go into fitting the block of the handle, it doesn't need to be, you know, perfectly snug up, because I'm going to come in now and do what's called bedding the Tang. So what bedding the Tang is I'm going to mix up some 5-minute epoxy. This is the only time I'll use 5-minute epoxy. For my full glue ups, I always use 24-minute epoxy, or 24-hour epoxy. I will coat my Tang in a wax, fill the block with some 5-minute epoxy, and I will clamp it down together. Wait until the epoxy is pretty much set, and then I'll slide my Tang out. Then I have a perfectly fit Tang slot, so I know when I'm putting my handle back together, it's going to go into the same position every single time. And what this allows me to do is I can then work the handle without it being attached to the knife. So let me get my materials together and I will show you what we need. Alright, this is essentially everything that I use to bed my Tangs. I've got my 5-minute epoxy, a file guide, I'll show you what that's used for in a second, some wax, this is a finishing wax but it works just as well, and a clamp. This clamp though, it has, so there's a slot cut in the top of this clamp, and again I'll show you what that's used for in a second. The first thing that I'm gonna make sure I'm doing is my surfaces. So my meet-up surfaces, the front of the block and the back of my bolster are flattened. I've gotten them as flat as I can get them. There's no light coming through, you know, check it up against some sort of light source. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do this, and I'll walk through it and talk about it as I'm doing it. The first thing I'm gonna do, since it's kind of cold in here, this glue is, you know, whoops, put this glue into just a little bucket of water to warm that up and get it moving better. Okay, so while that glue is getting warmed up, I'm going to prep this knife. Okay, I'm going to put just a thin layer of wax on this Tang. The reason I'm doing that, obviously, is so that the 5-minute epoxy, the glue, won't stick to this Tang, and I can release it after a short while that glue is setting up around it. So any surface I don't want gluing together essentially permanently, I'm just going to hit it with some wax. I'm going to do the same on the top of the handle block here. Just a thin layer is really all you need. So now I'm going to take my file guide, clamp it somewhere about there. So why I put the file guide up here is so that when I am gluing it together, and again, this is where my slotted clamp comes in. Now I can slide that right there. When I get my handle block pressed up, I just clamp it down and it'll hold it together for me. I used to do this, again, if you don't have a clamp like this, I used to do this with elastic bands. Again, it just worked. And obviously I've switched over to this because it works better. So you just mix up equal parts of your epoxy. Okay, my epoxy is all mixed. Now I'm just going to drizzle it in there. That was a bit too much. Okay. All set. Now we literally just and clamp it. There we go. Now, just wait until the glue dries and then should just pop right off. Alright, it's probably been close 10 to 15 minutes, not 5-minute epoxy, but it's ready to come off. So, just gonna take that off. I'm going to use a chisel just to, obviously there's some epoxy that spills out the sides and stuff. That'll make it a little bit harder to pop this off, so I'm just gonna scrape away the excess. Almost just scraped away my finger. Now what I like to do is I'm gonna move this file guide just a tiny bit. So all I'm doing is moving my file guide a bit closer to the front of my handle where that bolster is. I'm just closing this gap a little bit because what I like to do is take a screwdriver, put it in here, and then I just twist it and it'll pop that handle right off. Just work both sides. Give it a little twist. I can already see it coming off. This is why you got to be careful not to let the glue sit for too long, but it is coming out, so we're pretty much there. There we go. Clean this up a little bit. There you go. That's how you bed a hidden Tang knife. Well, not you. That's how I do it. Hopefully that helps you if you're trying to do it. I mean, there's a million different ways to go about it. That's how I do it. And now, I mean, that's not moving at all, and it goes back into the same spot every single time. So, I think I'm gonna go ahead and finish this knife, if you want to watch. Right, I've got as much of the handle done on the grinder that I can. Obviously this handle has a lot of facets, so there's kind of a specific way I go about finish sanding it, like hand sanding it, that I think could be helpful for someone that's, trying to do this, or if you just wanted to know how I do it. So typically what I used to do is, obviously you'll sand your handle up from different grits. So I would start at 400, 600, 800. So I used to do the whole thing, all 400, all 600, all 800. But for these multifaceted handles, I stopped doing that. So I'll just stick to doing one facet all the way through the grits, and then I'll go and do the ones beside it, and then the one beside it, and then the one beside it. Reason being, because I feel like when I do the whole thing at one grit, I'll do one facet and the line will kind of get pushed down, and then when I do the other facet it gets pushed back up, and I feel like it just felt like I was running in circles trying to chase these lines. So it made a lot of more sense for me to finish one facet, and that line gets pushed. It might get pushed a tiny bit, it might kind of stay where I want it to stay depending on the angle I'm working at. And so once this facet is done, I can go down here and sort of line this thing back up and not have to worry about then going 600 up here and then that line gets pushed out of center. I'll do a little drawing and hopefully that explains it better. Okay, so hopefully this isn't too confusing, but what I'll do is, for example, I'll finish this facet first and sand this up to 800. And so this line here, I'll move to this facet next. But if this line, it could be straight, if I'm really accurate off my grinder, but most of the times it's not super straight. And since I've already ground down this way, the line may be pushed a little bit downward, and now I can go to this area here and push it back up to line it up properly, and then work it through the grits and not have to worry about then going back up here and sanding 600 and then 800, because this might get pushed down again after I've already lined it up. So I just find it easier that way, again, rather than doing the whole thing in one grit. Because there's so many facets, I find that I end up running in circles trying to reline all this stuff up when I've already spent, however much time doing it. So anyways, hopefully that helps. It works for me. Now I gotta go and do it.